to chapter 7 of our book, Making Peace with Food. And today's topic is expressing our rights and our needs. And I am really excited to do this chapter because I'm going into it blindly. So everything is going to be fresh. My reaction is going to be fresh. And I'm excited for you guys to have that same experience and then hopefully get something really good out of this. And of course, we're going to, because we learn something every chapter. I also hope that you guys did really good with chapter 6, with your goal setting and getting past beliefs and things like that that may not be serving you, just for some good stuff. So, and some affirmations. All right, we're going to ready rock and roll. This is a long chapter, so I'm going to read quite quickly. But as always, especially if you're watching the recorded of this, you can always pause and think about it. We'll do the highlights. I'm going to make some notes. I got a pen with me this time so I can really write down things. Okay, so we are on page 145, expressing our rights and needs. All right. We are surrounded by people who habitually say and do things that encourage diet, weight obsession, and eating disorders. When people talk about their weight loss programs, it encourages us to be obsessed about our bodies. They think they need to lose weight. They must think I need to lose weight. When people admiringly tell us that we've lost weight or disapprovingly announce that we've gained weight, we feel pressure to be thin. They obviously like me more when I'm thin. I should be thin. When people objectify others, particularly in a fatist way, we are reminded that people are forever being judged on their appearance. Therefore, we feel pressure to look as beautiful as possible. They are judging that person on the basis of their appearance. I wonder how I measure up. How are we supposed to free ourselves from preoccupation when we are constantly being encouraged to be obsessed about diet and weight? First, we can make a personal decision to choose well-being over diet, weight conflict, in spite of the pressure to do the reverse. We learn to live with destructive influences by identifying what is harmful and reminding ourselves of our goal and beliefs. Second, we can encourage people around us to be actively supported because they have been subjected to the same destructive messages. However, we will have to teach them how to support us instead of our diet weight obsession. How can we teach them? By example and through discussion. Behaving as you would like others to behave is helpful, but it will not be sufficient because almost everyone else and the media provide a constant stream of poor examples. You will need to educate the people around you. This does not mean aggressively attacking their behavior. It means explaining why a particular behavior is harmful and suggesting specific alternatives. Deep inside, no one wants to hurt others. If people become aware of the destructiveness of certain comments or actions, they're usually willing to act differently. Common influences we need to discourage. Fatism. Fatism is one of the most widely accepted forms of prejudice and discriminations in our culture. Like racism and sexism, it is a prejudice based on physical characteristics. Some fatism is obvious. Direct criticism of someone's weight, for example, is blatantly fatist. Many fatist comments, however, are not so obvious. Suppose someone says, my Aunt Gertrude lost 40 pounds. She's at a much more reasonable weight now. The underlying fattest assumption is that because she lost 40 pounds, her weight was unreasonable. In reality, Aunt Gertrude may have been healthier and happier at the higher weight. Her body may have found the loss of those 40 pounds unreasonable. Most people are fattest and will defend their fatism even if they understand that human beings naturally come in all shapes and sizes. It's very difficult to get people to stop saying and doing fatist things. They've been taught this prejudice since birth and is reinforced daily. Being prepared to hear certain arguments over and over. Many people will claim that they're not fatist and will truly believe this to be the case, but will make fatist comments under the guise of health and fitness. When you point out that some people are genetically destined to be fat and hurt themselves by trying to change their natural size, they're likely to respond. Yes, but most fat people are completely out of shape. It's unhealthy. Don't you think they should get some exercise? As you try to identify fatism, keep the following questions in mind. Would this person criticize a stranger on the street with disgust in her voice because that person was smoking and thereby damaging her health? B, is this person disguised by every person who has a sedentary lifestyle or just by fat people who have sedentary lifestyles? C, why is fatness so disturbing to these people? Why is it worthy of comment? Fascism can go hand in hand in a preoccupation with fitness. As people who suffer from diet weight obsession, we usually share that preoccupation as well. Being physically active and fit can help us let go of the diet weight obsession. Therefore, I've encouraged it. But beware, as soon as fitness becomes a weight loss technique or a moral issue or a way of creating and measuring personal worth, we're in trouble. If we feel that we are bad if we do not exercise, that is almost as harmful as feeling that we are bad if we are fat. Hold right here. How many of us, studio, like, oh, I didn't get to work out today or whatever, and then we start to feel bad about it. That's an obsession. We have a value according to an activity that we choose to do. Most people in our society have sedentary lifestyles, but that doesn't make them bad people. It just makes them out of shape. We are all entitled to choose our own activity level, and we are worthy of respect and love regardless of how active or inactive we choose to be. And I think if you guys struggle with that, that's a big one right there. I'm totally making that a point right there. That's a big one. In short, overcoming fatism is a tough challenge. Even after someone seems convinced that it is unethical to be prejudiced against fat people, she is likely to return to fatist comments and arguments later. We can even find ourselves having fatist thoughts and feelings, despite our best efforts to reject that prejudice. We have internalized the fatism we have been taught, and society continues to brainwash us from the outside. However, we can contradict those thoughts by saying to ourselves, there's that fatism again. I don't believe in anyone. I don't believe it anymore, and I won't listen to it. Those who still hold on to their fatism, on the other hand, will try to justify and disguise it. We can help them reject fatism too. All right, objectification. This is a good one, objectification. Our society values appearance, especially women's appearance, far too much. We are often judged, and we often judge others solely on the basis of appearance. We often see ourselves and others treated as aesthetic objects instead of human beings. And the exclusive idealization of slenderness creates tremendous pressure to be as thin and beautiful as possible, which in turn encourages our preoccupation. All of us participate in this appearance mania. We are always saying that such and such a person looked really great, as if appearance were a tremendously significant index in her value. Noticing and talking about appearance is not inherently harmful. However, very frequent comments about anything imply that it is very important. We are part of a vicious cycle. We comment on appearance frequently because we live in an appearance-conscious society. Our frequent comments that encourage this appearance consciousness. Perhaps if we talk about appearance less frequently, we will stop influencing its importance. At the very least, it would be helpful if people would talk about appearance less than they talk about other characteristics, such as personality and well-being. When someone mentions that they saw a mutual acquaintance and tells you little or nothing about the person except how she looked, ask for more significant news about her. Don't perpetuate the implied judgment that appearance is the most significant aspect of a human being. Other do-nots include spending large amounts of time looking in the mirror, criticizing your appearance, allowing yourself to be objectified or objectifying others by whistling or leering, and rating people's appearance on a scale of 1 to 10. Explain to other people why such behavior is harmful, and interrupt yourself when you fall into those patterns. Remember that when people are treated as aesthetic objects instead of human beings, they are encouraged to treat themselves as objects and to feel like objects. Aesthetic objects, such as paintings and sculptures, have little or far beyond their appearance, have little to offer beyond their appearance. Not so much human beings. We need to act and to encourage others to act as though we all believe it. That is so good. Like, we have so much encouraged the physical world to determine the emotional world. And that is so crazy that we continue to do so, even though we know how harmful it is. It's like we've just given up. We've just given in to this way of thinking and way of living and the way that we create value in our lives. Absolutely crazy. But we're choosing to support it. Okay, here we go. Weight reduction propaganda. This is probably gonna be really good. Bottom of page 147. We all hear a constant drone of commercials that tells us to improve ourselves and our lives by losing weight. The underlying assumption of these commercials are that weight loss is good and improves the quality of life, that weight loss dieting is good, and that those who lose weight are good, and that thin people are happier and better adjusted than fat people. Thus, we're encouraged to feel that we should be thin more or less regardless of cost. It is virtually impossible to avoid hearing and seeing these commercials. However, we can either ignore them or criticize them. We must learn to ignore them in order to protect our new outlook. We need to criticize them in order to remind ourselves and others of their destructive influence, and thus ensure that we do not passively and unconsciously accept their messages. Unfortunately, the people around us accept these messages. We're faced with a stream of conversations about weight, food, and weight loss programs. In order to attain freedom from our preoccupation, we need to redirect or walk away from these destructive conversations. I like how they called it weight loss propaganda, because it's like media, you truly don't know, right? It's like anything in life or any conversation or what's going on with another human. You don't know until you're actually directly having an honest conversation with that person. So I like how they called it propaganda, because they're choosing to show us that, like it said, weight loss makes a happiness aspect of it, which is just a sick way of thinking, but we choose to do it. Okay, building allies for freedom. This is good because it's going to give us examples. It's going to give us some tools and tricks for us to get out of our head in terms of, how it affects us. If we initiate a serious discussion every time someone says or does something that supports diet weight conflict, we will drive everyone, including ourselves, crazy. There are an infinite variety of ways to contradict harmful messages, ranging from serious discussions to lighthearted disagreements to avoiding the subject completely. Try out all different ways to making your point. Try a serious discussion of the facts about diet and weight. Try jokingly telling your fattest friend that, yes, if she gains 1 pound, you will hate her forever and her life will be over. I do this all the time and it kind of ticks them off, but it's true. And try simply changing the subject. We cannot teach every person we meet to stop supporting diet weight conflict. However, if we teach our closest friends and relatives, we will have done ourselves and others a great service. I cannot emphasize the effect of loved ones' attitudes and behaviors. If loved ones encourage your preoccupation, whether they mean to or not, you will find it much more difficult to free yourself. Luckily, those who love you should be most willing to be supportive rather than destructive. Through honest discussion and by sharing this book, you can encourage the people around you to be your best allies. But be diplomatic. Remember that they were and are still subject to the same insidious lessons that have led you to be preoccupied with diet and weight. Explosions of anger and frustrations are counterproductive. You need to see friends and relatives understanding and supporting you, not defending themselves against critical attacks. Most important, be patient. Almost everyone supports the development and maintenance of diet weight conflict and eating disorders without knowing it. We have been trained to do so. Even after we understand many aspects of the problems and begin to try to undermine diet weight conflict, we can slip into destructive behavior. After all, objectifying others, making fattest comments, and talking about diet and weight control are considered normal. Everyone, including you and me, needs understanding, time, and practice in order to stop encouraging this preoccupation. Now we're going to go through some examples of building allies for freedom. Example 1. Suppose that a friend of yours has just begun to talk about her latest weight loss diet. She seems to want to swap frustration stories and advice, and she assumes that you are the perfect friend for this purpose. What could you do? You could treat this as a good opportunity to discuss your new thoughts and feelings about diet and weight. This friend will probably be interested in the psychological mechanisms with which she has been fighting. First, you could discuss the effects of diet and set point theory with her. Next, you might want to discuss your preoccupation and find out whether or not your friend has a similar problem. You can explain to her that weight loss programs and the assumptions that weight loss is a positive goal support the preoccupation that you're trying to overcome. Ideally, this friend could become a valuable ally who, like you, will work to reward freedom from diet weight preoccupation. At the very least, she could agree to stop undermining your efforts. Okay, example 2. So these are lots of supposed situations. So it always starts out with suppose. Example 2. Suppose a friend of yours notices an obese man on the street and says, "Look at that. Isn't it disgusting?" What could you say? My instinctive reply is, no, it isn't. And the person you just insulted isn't an it. He's a human being. Unfortunately, this type of reply tends to initiate an angry confrontation rather than a helpful discussion. As soon as we attack someone, all our defenses go up and little is likely to be accomplished. That in general is a lesson you guys should learn about communication. Anytime you choose to attack somebody or negate, you're immediately asking for an argument. Many alternatives are possible depending on the circumstance. For instance, I know you didn't mean any harm, but I find that comment very hurtful. Then you could talk about fascism and prevalence and your feelings about it. Or one of my workshop participants suggests, I wonder who's inside, don't you? And that's a really good one because then now you're creating an emotion based on what they just looked at as a physical being instead of a spiritual being. Example 3. This is probably one, talks about mothers. This is probably a very common one. Suppose your mother is a chronic dieter with whom you have shared many weight loss regimens. She pressures you to be thin, just as she pressures herself to be thin. And the shared frustrations of chronic dieting have become a big part of your relationship. How can you break out of this destructive pattern without losing closeness and intimacy? In many cases, a private discussion can help. Whether you live with your mother or see her twice a year, you can probably improve your relationship through honest and loving discussions. Try starting with the love. When was the last time you told your mother how much you love and respect her? Not only does she need to know it, she needs to hear it now and then. Have you ever told her what you particularly appreciate about her or acknowledged how hard she has tried? Start by appreciating your mother, then discuss how you're hurting each other without meaning to. Share some of the changes you're going through. Explain your current struggle towards freedom from the diet and weight obsession and explain your greatest fears. Are you afraid of losing your closeness? Are you afraid of losing her love and respect? Are you afraid of hurting her? After expressing your love, respect, and fear, you will have paved the way to ask for her help. For instance, you could ask her to stop commenting on your weight and diet. You could ask to share conversations and activities other than and instead of diet and weight concerns. Make it clear that you're not rejecting her. If you can express your love, respect, and desire for closeness, she'll be more likely to understand and accept why you are no longer willing to discuss or worry about calories, weight, and etc. I've made this sound easy when it is, in fact, difficult. Immediate family members are almost always involved in the development and maintenance of diet weight obsessions, and they are almost always the hardest to influence. The extent to which you will need to deal with them directly depends on your situation. The extent to which you'll be able to improve your relationship depends in part on the personal strength and flexibility, and theirs. Try to set realistic goals. Most important, always remember that you don't have to change anyone else's behavior in order to benefit. Just explaining your position and needs can help you regardless of how they react. At the very least, you can feel good about asserting yourself. You may even discover something about yourself. The influence of those who are close to you is probably the strongest inside your head. As you confront their destructive behavior, you may free yourself of some destructive thoughts and feelings. All right, the next topic is assertiveness. If you feel that you cannot stand up for your rights and needs, ask yourself why you feel that way. Do you often swallow your opinions and feelings because you don't think you deserve attention, or because you don't want to rock the boat, or because you are afraid that someone will disapprove? Many people, especially women, are not assertive, and frequently the problem goes hand in hand with low self-esteem. Becoming more assertive is very important as you work towards freedom from your diet and weight obsession. Why is it difficult for many of us to stand up for what we need and believe? One reason is that we don't think we deserve to have our needs met. Which of your parents seem to be valued most of your household? Whose needs were met or thoughts heard most often? If we have learned that we are not worthy of standing up for ourselves, we must unlearn it. We all deserve to be heard. We all have something worthwhile to say, and we all deserve to have our needs met. Another reason why we do not stand up for ourselves is that we don't think we can do so successfully. We fear that if we make a demand or point out the harmfulness of others' behaviors, that they will become offended or angry and refuse to respond in a helpful way. In order to speak out, we need to know that if people respond with anger or disapproval, we won't crumble up and die, nor feel that we did something wrong. We also need to know how to assert ourselves, how to be assertive instead of aggressive or passive. Most of us can benefit from books on assertiveness. There's resources, pages 240, 242, or an assertiveness training course. In addition, we can improve our skills for dealing with conflict. So good, guys. That's so good. To me, that also creates a topic of just setting boundaries, standing up for yourself. And I always just tell people it is something that I'm constantly working on, is being respectful and sharing my opinions instead of devaluing somebody else's opinions. And one of the hardest things that I think us humans struggle with is not practicing equality in people's thoughts. That if I think this bank is the best bank in the world, I should be able to think this bank is the best bank in the world while somebody else is too, without me degrading what they think, right? Their opinion. So it's a good little tool to practice, it's a good little just thought to practice. Yes. All right, so page 151, ingredients of a disarming and effective response. Okay. We need skills in order to respond when somebody mistreats us. When we see someone behaving destructively and we want to make her aware of the harm done. And when we want someone to do something, go somewhere or agree with us, and she is resisting. When we are in need of a disarming and effective reply, we are often in a situation where someone has hurt or offended us. If this is the case, we have a decision to make. Do we want to strike back and hurt this person? Vent our frustration and pain on the seemingly deserving target? Or would we rather let go of our desire for revenge and encourage this person to change her objectionable behavior? Sorry, it was a compound. Okay. The first option is quite easy to carry out, but gets us nowhere. The most important thing to remember in the face of conflict is that people need to know you're on their side. They need to know that you respect their opinions and feelings. Once you allow them a little time and emotional separation from their behavior and show them respect, you can say much more without triggering their defenses. The steps described below may seem drawn out and cumbersome. It would take forever, you might complain. This method is more time consuming than most people's instructive method of handling conflict, but that is what it takes to get good results. People are fragile. It's easy to threaten and hurt one another. Consequently, it takes time and patience to deal with conflict in a non-threatening, disarming, and effective way. Here's an overview of the steps. 1, clarify her viewpoint. Identify. So, clarify, identify, restate. So you say, this is what I hear you say. Okay. Number 2, get your interpretation confirmed. So then that's it. Number 3, isolate each point of disagreement. Clear communication. 4, point out how you agree. So whatever you're agreeing with. 5, state your point of view. And 6, get your point of view confirmed. So you're always going to them first. I hear you. This is what you're saying. This is how I'm interpreting it. This is my response. This is how I view it. And this is the conclusion based on our 2 points of views. That's summary of it. Some of the steps can be compressed or skipped depending on the situation. How well you know the person involved, how much she trusts and respects you, and whether or not she feels that you trust and respect her. But beware of too many shortcuts. If you find yourself replacing steps 1 through 4 with yes, but, you've gone too far. Yes, but is never a good thing to do. In the face of a disagreement, even people you know well need to be reassured that you are listening and that you respect their opinion. Okay, so it breaks down all these different steps to go through it. Here we go. Step 1, identifying, clarifying, restating the point of view. Restate the other person's view in order to A, make sure that you understand the conflict, B, show that you listened to and understood her, and C, show that you care about and respect her opinions. It gives an example. Step 2, get your interpretation confirmed. Unless the person confirms your understanding of her opinion, you leave yourself open in a frustrating experience. You provide a brilliant response. She then agrees with your viewpoint, but instead of changing her point of view or behavior, she presents you with a new objection. Oh, I didn't say that. I meant, does that sound familiar? It is easy to ask for confirmation. Just end your statements with a question such as, Is that what you meant? Or did I get that right? If she rejects your interpretation, fine. You know that you needed to probe in order to fully understand the problem, and the other person will appreciate your attempts to understand. Ask for and listen to the new explanation, and then try again. Restate your viewpoint and ask for confirmation. In the process of making sure that you understand the other person's viewpoint, you may discover that you do not stand in conflict after all. You may even change your point of view. Some people automatically assume their opinion is right and just go through the motions of identifying the other person's point of view. That may be an inappropriate concern at this point, but skilled debaters are famous for being able to win arguments, regardless of whether they're right or wrong. Once you become a skilled debater, be sure to avoid this unkind and irresponsible behavior. And that will separate you from narcissistic behavior to non-narcissistic behavior. Step 3, isolate each point of the disagreement. In the face of conflict, you need to know exactly what you're up against. Ideally, you would like the person to say that she has only one point of disagreement. Then you know that if you overcome that objection, you'll be home free. Unless you isolate the disagreement, you invite a common and frustrating experience. You answer the original objection only to be presented with another objection. For example, I think you're right about that, but I also think that. Of course, people can respond that way even if you have isolated the objections, but they will do so less frequently. It gives examples. Step 4, point out how you agree. This can be a difficult step because you strongly disagree with the person in at least one area. However, you can usually find some common ground. For instance, you may not agree with someone's actions or statements, yet appreciate her intentions, or you may agree about the importance of the subject. In any case, it is critical that you agree with the person in some way before you go on to express your point of view. Why? Because in order to do so effectively, you need to be on the same side of the fence. You need to show that you're not against her. It gives examples. Step 5, state your point of view. Now you have paved the way to express your thoughts and feelings. Try to express yourself clearly and firmly, but not aggressively. Say whatever you have to say as though you are sure that the other person is going to understand and agree with you. Almost as though no disagreement exists. Do not attack the person to whom you're speaking. Wherever possible, criticize behavior or statements rather than the person. That's good. Criticize not the actual human, criticize the belief or share the opinion. Whenever possible, allow that person to gain distance from her behavior before using negative words such as unjust, factist, cruel, or sexist, or avoid such words altogether. If your viewpoint is somewhat long and involved, try asking if she understands what you're saying along the way. Even if she doesn't agree, at least you'll know she is understanding your viewpoint. Good. Step 6, get your viewpoint confirmed. Ideally, you would like the other person to be able to summarize what you said in her own words and agree. This may be a lot to strive for, but try to assume that it will happen as you speak. If you can convince yourself that it's bound to happen, you'll be more relaxed and effective. When a person seems unconvinced, try to get her to explain your point of view. So just as you start out saying, this is what I hear you say, encourage them to do that same thing to you. When a person seems unconvinced, okay, try to get your point of view. This will give you a chance to correct any misinterpretations and improve the other person's understanding. Not to mention that any point of view will probably sound more reasonable to the person when explained in her own words, in her own voice. It gives examples. So we're at the top of page 54, the end of the paragraph right above the second block of the picture. If the person says that she understands, but actually seems confused, try to say something like, you do? Great. Would you mind repeating that back to me? I'm not sure if I explained it right. If the person says that she understands, but then states the same objection over again, which you just answered, try something like, I think I know just what you mean, but I don't see how it differs from what you said before. Could you explain that to me? Ineffective phrases to avoid. It repeats it again. Yes, but. Yes, but. Yes, but. Whenever you reply with yes, but, you convey the following message, even though you may not mean to. That last statement was so worthless that I'm going to dismiss it with a quick yes, but, and move right on to my point of view. So listen and learn from one who knows. People don't appreciate that message. It encourages them to react defensively, and it sets you up on opposite sides. You're wrong. Ooh, that statement strengthens the other person's conviction because it suggests that you are insensitive and closed-minded. It also tends to elicit anger, resentment, and stubbornness. How can you say that? This suggests that you don't respect the other person, so she becomes defensive. Obviously, she thinks, I just open my mouth and speak. Who you to criticize what I say? You're so, and then a negative adjective. Name calling, of course, is the antithesis of a disarming and effective response. If you find yourself reduced to that, apologize and start over. Here are very effective phrases to use. Maybe you can help me out. People love to help. They love knowing that they have something to offer someone else and that someone else could trust and respect them enough to say. By enlisting their help, you can circumvent their defenses and teamwork with them. Teammates are much more cooperative than opponents. As soon as they agree to help you, they implicitly agree to try to understand your point of view. Would you mind if I told you something personal? Ooh, that's a good one. People love juicy stuff like that. That's personal. People hate to be told to listen. However, we all love to be confided in and trusted. If you seem to trust others to listen in an empathetic way, they're likely to try to live up to that expectation. What was that like for you? People like and need to talk about how they felt and how they feel. If you draw out their reactions and feelings, they will usually want to hear your reactions and feelings too. As you show concern for each other, it will be much easier to understand and resolve any disagreement. I'm very interested in your opinion. This statement implicitly ensures people that you are willing to listen and learn, even though you may disagree. It puts you and the other person on the same side. Tell me more. If you encourage people to talk and then listen to them, they will be more likely to trust and listen to you. I appreciate the way you've listened to me. It's always helpful to appreciate people's efforts, especially when they have behaved in a way you value highly. When you appreciate that someone has listened to you, she will probably appreciate that you too listened well. In any case, open appreciation almost always makes both people feel better. An example of the method in use. This is kind of hard to read from my point of view, but I'll go from this. It's kind of easier for you guys to read, but I'm gonna go through it. Participants in my workshop often describe how their parents and employees have pressured them to improve their appearance by losing weight or wearing makeup. Most of them report that they dealt with this criticism and pressure by trying to conform or by ignoring it, and therefore hearing more about it later. Either way, they lost their felt abuse and pressured to obsess about their diet, weight, and appearance, and they saw no way to resist that pressure. Here's a woman choosing a different option. Janet is a secretary who is being reviewed by her boss, Margaret. So when I go back and forth, you guys, when I'm reading this, I'll say the person and then, stating what they're saying. Margaret. In short, Janet, your performance has been better than ever this year, and I'm very pleased. Now I want to touch on something I'm concerned about. I've noticed that your appearance has changed for the worst. You gain weight, you don't wear makeup anymore, and often you wear you wear rather unattractive clothing. I get the feeling that you're depressed, that you don't like yourself, and that's why you don't take care of yourself. In a way, this is our business, but you're the person people see before they get to me, and consequently, your appearance reflects on me. Do you understand? I'm very concerned about the appearance of the office, and I'm concerned about you as a person. Is something wrong? The phone rings with a call from Margaret. She talks for a while and then hangs up. Sorry about the interruption. I'm so pressed for time these days. It's crazy. Where were we? Janet. Well, you just asked me if something was wrong, but you just seem so busy. Do you have 15 minutes or so to discuss this, or would you rather plan to talk another time? Margaret. We can talk about it now. My meeting doesn't start for another half hour. Janet. Okay, good. Let me make sure that I understand what you're saying. You worry that I'm feeling bad about myself, and you're feeling that I don't make myself attractive enough to fulfill my responsibility as your secretary. Is that correct? Is that right? See how when the way that they're communicating back and forth, how bad that just sounded. Like what Margaret stated, how Janet took it, and how Janet is now challenging what Margaret said. Margaret, oh no, you fulfill your secretarial responsibilities very, very well. It would be virtually impossible for me to replace you. But yes, I'm concerned about you and the way you present yourself. I think it would be better for you as well as for the image of our office if you would take better care of yourself. Janet, I really appreciate your concern. You've always been very good to me, but since this is my annual review, I want to make sure I understand the problem completely. If I felt good about myself and I took care of myself, would you be completely satisfied with my performance? Margaret, yes. Janet, would you mind if I told you something personal? Since you're concerned, I really want you to understand. Margaret, yes, please do, dear. Janet, it's true that when I started to work here, I was thinner and I wore makeup and different clothes. I guess that most people saw me, as you did, a very well-groomed and cheerful woman. In reality, though, I wasn't all that happy and I was insecure. I was completely obsessed with my appearance. I felt I always had to look exactly right. Looking that way cost me a lot. I was always on a semi-starvation diet. I spent a lot of time making sure that every hair was in place and that my makeup was perfect. I have severe skin problems and my dermatologist said that I shouldn't wear makeup, but I ignored him because my appearance was more important to me than my skin or my health. I really tortured myself to look good. Do you know what I mean? Margaret, yes, I know exactly what you mean. But don't you think, Janet, wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I need to finish my train of thought. It's not easy for me to explain all of this, but I'd like to finish, okay? Margaret, sorry, go ahead. Janet. One of the reasons why I was so obsessed with my appearance was that I didn't like myself. I was always trying to make up for my inadequacies by looking as attractive as possible. I wasn't comfortable in those clothes because they were too tight and restrictive, and I wasn't comfortable. I didn't feel good at that weight. Makeup was also a bad thing for me, not only because of my skin problem, but because I was trying to make myself look like a model instead of accepting and appreciating my own face. It's only now that I feel better about myself that I've been able to treat myself better by eating when I'm hungry instead of starving myself all the time, by wearing more comfortable clothing, and by taking good care of my skin. I know that you're trying to help me, not trying to hurt me. That's why I'm telling you all this. Since you're concerned, I want you to know I feel better about myself than I did before. I finally feel like I'm okay just as I am. I think that's one of the reasons why I've gotten better at my job over the last year. I'm a lot more comfortable with myself. I feel more confident. Now you're telling me that I'm not okay as I am? That I have to lose weight and wear makeup and uncomfortable clothing. If I have to do it for the office image, that's one thing. And if you're right, and you're right to tell me so. But as far as my own good is concerned, that's something else. Do you see that what you're asking will hurt instead of help me? Margaret, I think I do. But does looking unkempt help you feel better about yourself? Because I can't believe that it does, and it's a problem. Janet, do I really look unkept? Margaret, well, yes. I guess the main problem is that your hair tends to look uncombed and your clothes are too casual. Janet, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to look messy. I guess that my hair gets windblown when I walk to work. If I wear more formal clothing and comb my hair when I get here, will you be satisfied? Margaret, yes, I'm sure that'll be fine. This example may sound unrealistic, partly because bosses are rarely sensitive and partly because few people can express themselves that well under pressure. But it provides a general example. Don't feel bad if you have trouble producing disarming and effective responses. It's not easy, but be assured that practice helps. When you once would have been speechless with anger and pain, you can learn to think of something to say. At first, you won't be able to remember what to do. You may lose your train of thought or your temper. You may get confused by a good debater, and you may not say what you need to say. But the more you practice, the better you'll be able to stand up for yourself. Your efforts will be well spent. For if you can learn to deal with conflict well, your confidence, self-esteem, and life satisfaction will surely increase. As you try to respond to problems in a disarming and effective way, remember that most people mean well. It's just that they make lots of mistakes and misunderstanding much of what they see, just like you and me. Try to get on their side of the fence and try to stay there while you express your thoughts and feelings. Most people will respond well. Furthermore, if a person responds poorly, you can learn a lot about that person from her reaction. Most important, remember that you don't need to come out on top in order to win. Choosing to be assertive instead of aggressive or passive in itself is a major victory. Okay, last thing, then we got our assignment. Building allies and letting go. If we learn to influence the people around us in a non-aggressive fashion, we can decrease the pressure that supports diet and weight obsession and eating disorders by undermining fatism, the objectification of human beings, the effectiveness of advertisements, films, and other media that encourage diet and weight conflict, myths about diet and weight conflict control, pressure to worry about diet and weight, and desires and efforts to conform to harmful aesthetic ideas. As you begin to do this, however, beware of pouring too much of your energy into others. Remember that as much as you would like to change the world, you also want to let go of your own preoccupation. This requires a lot of time and energy. The primary goal of educating relatives and friends is to create a haven of sorts, to ensure that the people closest to you, at least, won't be destructive influences. However, you can build a few dedicated allies. As you gain freedom from your preoccupation, it will become easier to be exposed to negative influences without being harmed. While you're still immersed in your preoccupation, however, your tolerance may be very low. If you're unable to direct destructive conversations in a different direction, if you're unable to do so, you may need to walk away. You may want to avoid especially fatist or sexist people, as well as those who often discuss their eating and weight. You may want to avoid media such as pornography and films that objectify people. The negative effects of such influences can be very powerful. They can stir up and intensify desires to be model thin, make you feel dissatisfied and anxious about your body, and encourage you to restrict and manipulate your diet. Ultimately, you want to be free to go anywhere and be with anyone without being upset by destructive influences. But if certain situations or people are very harmful, remember that you can seek out different situations and different people. Avoidance is often a very appropriate choice. In short, an endless stream of influences support the development and maintenance of diet weight obsession. We must change the situation. Otherwise, diet and weight obsessions and eating disorders will continue to flourish in epidemic proportions, and we will find it very difficult to free ourselves. We cannot hope to create an environment that undermines our preoccupation without influencing the attitudes and behaviors of at least the significant people in our lives. You know how they always say you are the top 5 people you hang out with. Armed with knowledge and goodwill, we can become a chain reaction. If we change the way our friends and relatives think about the central issues surrounding diet and weight, perhaps each of them will have an effect on the views of someone that they know, and so on. So many people are severely preoccupied with diet and weight. If as few as 5 or 10% of us enlightened our friends and relatives, we will soon see a blossoming social movement toward a healthier and saner view of our bodies and eating and ourselves. What a good chapter. Okay, turning to page 160, the assignment, personal questions, exploring your positive environment and needs. So again, we have these awesome little assignments to just figure out where we are in that area. All right, guys. It was so fun to read through this chapter. I really liked how it kind of goes a little bit further and deep into just in general how to communicate with people, especially if there's disagreements. So when you're trying to push through something like this, especially if you're in such a diet world where that's all the focus is, it's a great way for you to learn to communicate and to create new relationships with them. So thanks, guys, for tuning in, and I will see you next week for chapter 8. Bye.